Are you a freelancer, consultant, or a coach looking to streamline your time tracking and invoicing workflow? If so, you are in the right place. As a freelancer, I use a time tracker template which is available in my shop for time tracking and rate calculation. I use a combination of a time tracker template and an invoice template in a Google Docs for my invoice. However, I realized it would be more efficient to manage all the invoices for all clients in just one Google Sheet. That's why I have created a new solution. And in this video, I'm going to show you how to use it for your business and save your time for better use of other tasks which are more interesting to you. So first, let me walk you through the features available in this template. We have a time tracker that lets you track time and calculate the rate for each time entry. Based on the client name that you enter, it automatically pulls the corresponding rate from the client database. You can also customize it to calculate in units of hours or minutes. Then for the invoicing purpose, our invoice generator makes creating your invoice very easy. You just need to select the invoice number and it will all populate it for you, and you can export it to PDF. If you need to attach the timesheet to the invoice, there is a timesheet export feature. You can either make a copy or save it to PDF for export. Next, the invoice dashboard gives you an overview of all your invoices. Lastly, as we grow, it's important to track how our time contributes to our income. This template includes an earnings dashboard to analyze the time spent and earnings based on the date the work was performed. This was added as a bonus because I believe it will help us better manage our time and charge appropriate rates for our services. If you're interested to learn more about how this template works, keep watching. Now, to get started with our Freelancer Invoice Manager, this is the workflow that we suggest. First of all, you'll need to customize your tool. There are a few important settings that you will need to put in order for this to work for you. First of all, we have the billable duration display. This is used to customize the duration to either display in hour or minute unit. For example, if you are charging your client on an hourly basis, you can go for the default settings, which is calculating based on the hour. If you are charging based on the minute and you want to go for the minute, simply untick this box and click on the minute box to change it. Next, we have the time rounding. For this, it works better for those of you who charge an hourly rate. For example, now I'm rounding out to 1 decimal point, and for 31 minutes it's getting rounded to 0.5 hour, which means we are undercharging the client by 1 minute. Let's say if we change it to 2 decimal, then this would be the displayed and the calculated hour duration based on this start and end time. And as a result, we overcharge the client by 0.2 minutes. So this will give slightly lesser deviation as compared to 1 decimal. But the choice is yours, so you can just enter the decimal point that you want to apply to each time entry and it will calculate for you. Next, we have this handy feature of invoice due reminder. So when the invoice is due, based on the number of days that you want to get alert before the invoice due date, we will calculate this for you and alert you by showing it in a different color. Next, you enter your company details. So you can key in the business name, the Yogo URL. For example, this is mine, and once I key in that, with an PNG in or JPEG format, So as long as it's an image URL, you can put it in and it will populate the logo for you for reference. And this will also be displayed in your invoice later. Then you will need to key in the business address and all the info, and these are all necessary to have a complete invoice in your invoice generator. So this information are being populated and here based on the info that you key in your setting page. Next, we have year month format. This is being applied to where we will need the year month for analysis and the visualization. Next, we have the service category. You can use it as a service name, or you can use it to just simply categorize your tasks. And do note that this would be displayed in your invoice generator. For example, the service name will be displayed as a main title for this task, and the description will be displayed underneath it. This is also helpful for you to categorize your tasks, so I highly recommend to use it. If you don't want to display any category, you can feel free to leave it blank. Next, we have the client database. Here, in the yellow cells, you need to keep track of your client name, the ID, name, business address, the PIC, the email, phone, and the rate per hour, and lastly, the payment link. The payment link will display in the invoice, so if you don't need it, you can just leave it blank. For the rate, it actually uses the same currency as the currency that you decide here. Let's say if I'm putting euro here, and this will change the display here, and all the display here, it will display it in euro instead. For the rate, if you are following minute rate, it will also show it as a rate per minute. So you'll have to make sure the setting here is done correctly before you move on to the next phase where we are going to track the time. So every time you do a work for a client, you have to first add a date. For example, can add a date here and select the client name. I only have one here, so I'm going to select here. But once you enter all the client's name here, it will get populated in this dropdown. Then you enter the start time. For example, I start 11 o'clock and I stop at 11:43. And you have to put it as whether this is billable. If it's billable, just tick it. You can click on it or you can just hit space to tick the checkbox or untick it. So just hit the space button on your keyboard. Then you can select which category this task belongs to. For example, if this is an in-person coaching, just select it. And that's all. That's all you have to do. Just make sure that you only fill in at the yellow cells and not the grayish cells because those cells contains formula. And also do take note of the invoice status because it will help to get the invoice status from the invoice tracker. So now it's time to invoice your client and you want to put in the invoice number. For this, maybe we'll just do invoice 01. So I can copy this and just put it at all the invoice here. So I can do like 2 and drag it down to copy everything to the same invoice. So this will help us to build all these entries to one single invoice. Just make sure you use the same invoice number and that's it. you have to now move on to the invoice tracker and click on this drop down. You will see the new invoice being added to this list. Just select it and it will help to populate the total amount and total billable hours or minute based on what you selected. Then you select invoice date. For example, it's today. And if the client hasn't paid, you just leave it blank for the rest of it. Go back here and you'll see that this will be displayed as not paid. Before we track this, it will be shown as not found because when the invoice number is not found in the invoice tracker, there won't be any invoice status. So it will be shown as not found. Now you come to this invoice tracker, you will see this payment term. This payment term will be used to calculate the due date for the invoice. For example, if we are giving 7 calendar days for our client to clear up the payment, then it will calculate starting from the invoice date, add 7 days to it to derive the due date. Based on the due date, we have this status reminder. For example, this two invoice has been overdue, so it will highlighted in red. If you want to follow up with the client, just scroll to the right and look for the client information. You can call them, email them to remind them before the payment is due. And we have another status called due soon, which is used for those of you who charge interest rate on late payments or penalty on late payments. You want to remind your clients a certain number of days before the payment due. So maybe in my case, I'm putting it as 10 days before the payment due. I'm going to give a reminder to the person in charge. But you can feel free to change it if you want to remind them 3 days before. Just change it to 3 days. And the status here will be changed to pending because we still have 7 days for the client to pay. For the invoice generator, we will need to select a invoice. For example, just select one of the invoice and it will help to populate the invoice date based on what you have entered in the invoice tracker. It will pull your customer information and your information for the billing, and it will display the description in the service category that you have defined and choose for the entry, including the description. You'll see the rate, the total duration depends on what you have selected. If you select minutes, it will be displayed in minute. If you use hour, it will be displayed in hour instead. Then it will show the total amount. For this one, I think the correct one is hourly rate. So change to hour, go back to the invoice tracker, and this will be calculated accordingly. It will also auto-populate the payment methods for you and a logo for you based on what you have entered in the settings page. Here we have more space, so if you have more than 4, just expand this part here so that you can export the invoice properly. If you have just 4, you can get rid of this line here. Just press delete. Then you can click print and it will be generated in this format, and then you can save it as PDF. Next, we also have the timesheet export for you. So you have to select the client name, the type, which is billable or non-billable hours, and the invoice. So if you want all for this same client, just select all for these 2 options. And this is where you will have this table here that is ready to be shared to your client. You can copy it and paste it in a new spreadsheet, or you can use our formula to move this easily to your new sheet. And after the payment is being done, you can click on this tracker. Just click on this paid checkbox, check it, and select a payment date. For example, it's today, and put in how much the client has paid you. For example, they have paid you exactly the amount. Just key in the amount here, and this will be highlighted in green. If they are paying maybe part of the payment, then it will be shown as partially paid. There is also a quick table here that you can use to keep track of how much amount is still overdue from your client and how much is coming soon, how much is being paid, and how much is still pending. And you have the total amount here for your visibility. For better insights, I would recommend to look at the invoice dashboard. This will give you a fuller picture of all your invoices. For example, you have the paid, total hours, and amount. You have the pending payment, including those which are still overdue, and you have the to invoice total hours and total amount to collect. Then you can also see how many of the hours are actually unbillable and how much percentage of it. So this will help you optimize your time so that you don't spend too much time on a non-billable task, or maybe in the future you can take into account of your non-billable into the rates so you can better charge or estimate your time. And here we have an interactive dashboard. For a better view of this dashboard, I'm going to change to another example here. Now you can see in this dashboard, we have multiple clients. Here in this pie chart, you can see the contributions to the total earnings by each client. For example, these clients host 40% of the total income. So you want to prioritize their tasks or help them better in the future. And we also have summary earnings by client and month. It shows you the breakdown of the total earnings by each client for every single month. In this dashboard, it shows the earnings for when the work was actually completed. So it gives you the insights when the revenue generating activities occurred regardless of when the invoice was issued. So for example, you can see a monthly trend over time from this chart, so you know when is your most productive period, and maybe you can ask yourself, why does that happen? How can we replicate the success? Then you have a simple table here that shows you summary earnings by month, the earnings by client, and the total earnings by client as a table. On the most right, you have the monthly breakdown of each client and as a total. If you want to just analyze it for a certain period, just feel free to use the filters over here. For example, I'm interested in the Q1 performance. I'll select January, February, and March 2024 and click OK. This will filter everything here to this just Q1. If you want to analyze based on just one client, just clear everything and select the client name. Or you want to compare the performance of certain service for all of the client, you can just select, for example, marketing, blogging, video editing, click OK. This will help you compare for the selected services. And there is also this workday filter here. So if you want to look into specific dates, you can also use this drop down. Do note that this filters works the same for the invoice dashboard. So that's all about this software that I've created. It is very comprehensive, and also in a way it's kind of complicated, which is why I have outlined the process for you to get into the workflow of using this the best way. Once again, if you are interested in this template, please feel free to check out the link below, and I will have a limited time promotion for you for those of you who follow my YouTube account. I really appreciate all of your support. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask before you place the order, because all these are digital templates, digital items, and hence they are not refundable. So I appreciate if you have any questions, just feel free to clarify them with me. I'll be happy to answer them and direct you to the appropriate solution. And if you prefer a simple solution, I would recommend you to check out my time tracker tool, which only have the time tracking function, but that is also very sufficient if you're just starting out. If you prefer a more comprehensive solution that can streamline your invoice workflow, I would really recommend the Invoice Manager, because it offers you not just the invoice tracker, time tracker, the insights dashboard, we have two of them, and invoice generator and a timesheet export, which you can use for all of your clients. This would really make your invoicing works easier, and it will help you manage them easily. Right, I'll end this video here, and let me know if you have any questions. I'll be happy to take them and help you out. Thank you, and I will see you in the next video. Bye bye.